Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Today we were working on the Decades Cobra again, and it's been a difficult day or two. I've started to dive into the footbox to get the Coyote accelerator pedal and bracket installed. Now, this is an early enough car, and it has a Gen 1 Coyote. And so therefore, in those earlier cars, they did not have you mount a particular bracket in there for the pedal. They basically just had you bolt the pedal to the existing mount in the footbox. You cut the pedal off at the bottom and you grafted on the hot rod pedal, basically, that they provide you in the complete kit. So come right back and I'm going to show you how extremely tight it is in the footbox to get this all to fit. All right, we're gonna start here in the footbox, and I've got the pedal in the car right now, which is the farthest I've gotten so far. And I've got everything kind of in place, and I'll get to that in a minute. But there was a lot of disassembly. The best advice that I can give anyone installing a Coyote into a Mark IV, because I don't have any experience with the Mark V yet, is to install the Coyote pedal first. Before you put the Willwood brake assembly in, before you do anything else, before you even put your sheet metal on for the first time. So you're going to disassemble your sheet metal when it comes for the footbox. Mount the Coyote pedal in when the footbox sides are off, because it just makes it so much easier to get in there. Now I'm doing most of the work from right here. From this side, I'm getting in here and I'm getting, you know, the bracket in, the bolts in, and all that kind of stuff. But with that other side on, this inside panel right here, and there's actually two panels, one for the top, one for the bottom, it just makes it exceedingly hard to see where things are hitting. Like if you're having interference problems, it's difficult to see where they're hitting when you're trying to work against that footbox side. So with the footbox side off, it gives you better access to see where it's still rubbing, where it's still making contact, and all that kind of stuff. So let's start with the bracket that I had here for the accelerator pedal first. So I had an accelerator pedal mount for a Coyote here in the shop, and it was bent completely backwards. So the bend down here was backwards, and then the bend up here was backwards. So this piece was like this. Okay? Well, this right here, where these two holes are, mount near the brake pedal, and this side over here is where it basically wraps around the 3/4 inch tube that hold the Willwood pedals in place. So if you're looking at this, actually it's like this. If you're looking at this, if it's going to go in there, this has to be facing the other way. And I looked at it and looked at it. I even tried to install it more than once before I figured out it was not going to go in that way. So what I did is I cut it, and basically I was going to take this to my machinist, because he has the facilities, he has the welder, and he has the experience to weld this with a TIG welder that will weld stainless steel, because this bracket is in fact stainless steel. So I was going to take it to him, have him weld it. Before I did that, I put a call out onto a couple of Facebook pages, and I think I may have put it on Factory 5 Builder on Facebook. So that's one of the more popular pages. A friend of mine, Greg, and I run Factory 5 Family, and we run Factory 5 Family trading posts. But I needed a little more exposure, so I put it on the Builder page as well. And I asked if anybody had one of those mounting plates for the Coyote, Gen 2 and Gen 3, because that's what that bracket's from. And Mike Everson was nice enough to speak up, said he thought he had one. He told me that he rummaged through his scrap bin. So thankfully I got it before he recycled it. But he came forward and shipped one to me. So that was nice. And then I also had another guy just after Mike offered to ship me another one, and I thought, well, I don't really need it, but if I have it, then I'll have one for the next time, and I won't have to go out and look for one again. I'll just put it upstairs in storage, and hopefully I'll be able to find it when I need it. But so I've got the one from Mike installed in the car, and you saw that. But what you're going to have to do, and I'm going to pull that whole assembly out of there in a few minutes, you're going to have to basically make the Coyote pedal match the profile of the left side of that bracket. And in the instructions that you get with a Gen 2 or a Gen 3, possibly even a Gen 4 Coyote, they just tell you to, cut this portion off and then it'll fit. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't fit in a Mark IV anyway. So what I found is that I just took the flap wheel and the grinder, and I used it to contour the edge of the pedal where the mounting holes are to follow the bracket that it fits now, but it still rubs. So if I put the light in here and I turn the wheel, what you're gonna see, I'll put the light in the top, I think. I'm not having any luck here. What the what? Okay. So what you're gonna see is right in there, right in here, where this mounting bolt screw is, if I turn the steering wheel, the steering shaft, it makes contact right there. Basically, every time it comes around, it makes contact right there. Now, it's just rubbing just enough to make a mark on the steering shaft. But what I found, and I'll see if I can zoom in from this side because I really don't want to climb underneath the car. Oh! So what I found is it's actually hitting too close? No, right there. So it's hitting right here, right where the 3/4 inch tube runs this way, and then it runs across the front of the brake pedal. It's right where it's hitting. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that accelerator pedal out one more time, and I'm going to use the flap wheel and the grinder, and I'm going to clearance that corner where the weld bead is, because that's where it's hitting. It's just that little bit that's not allowing it to tuck right in next to that 3/4 inch tube. So I'm hoping by clearancing that, I'll get that little infinitesimal amount that I need so that the steering shaft doesn't make contact with my bolt. And that's probably the best we're going to be able to do. After that, there's really not a whole lot I can do except maybe enlarging the two holes that mount the steering bearing here and moving everything over this way. Again, it wouldn't take much. I could probably just take a carbide burr and enlarged the hole maybe 1/16 of an inch, just enough so that that steering shaft wasn't making contact with that bolt, and we'd be fine. And that would be like my last resort, but I'm gonna try just to clearance the pedal itself so it'll push over towards that 3/4 inch tube, just that little bit, and see if we can gain that little bit of room that we need in order to make it turn without rubbing. So that's what I'm gonna work on right now, and then I'll bring you back, and while I have it out, I'll show you the whole pedal assembly and how I contour it around the bracket itself. Now, we're gonna powder coat this bracket too, so that's gonna add a little bit of thickness to the bracket. I'm just hoping that it's not so much that it's gonna rub again, or I'm hoping that I clearance the pedal enough that I'll have the clearance I need in order for it not to rub. So we'll see. Music update, Dio, Rainbow in the Dark. I've got the pedal out, the pedal assembly out, along with the bracket, and right here, I still haven't cleaned it up, but you can see I've basically just followed the contour of the bracket. So if you look at the back of the bracket, you can see I just took the flap wheel and got in there just as tight as I could to get all that plastic material out of the way. And it's still rubbing right here. That's where it's rubbing the steering shaft. So what I'm going to do, I marked the back side of it. And what you can see on the back side is as this is bolted to the bracket, see that black plastic you can see that is sticking out past the stainless steel bracket? That material needs to come off for the bracket to sit flat. So I'm going to come in here with a flap wheel again. We've still got material here. I'm not gonna grind it down until I go through, but I'm gonna take the flap wheel and I'm gonna grind this area down until it's flush with this right here, and that should enable this bracket basically to do this, to go over to the left and then provide us some clearance right here, because so far I haven't drilled the hole for this upper mount, and you can see I had to cut this too. I had to cut this back in order for our brake line to go through there. Now, if this bracket was already in there and I wanted to run the brake line, it would be one more part that I'd have to kind of drill through to get the brake line up and around. But since the brake line's already in place, I was able to just notch around it. I'm still probably going to clearance it a little bit more for the brake line. The next time it goes in, I'm going to check it and I'm going to see where I can clearance this area right here. And then the brake line should be clear. And then what I'll do is I'll put some rubber vacuum hose around the brake line, just so that in the future, if the brake line moves at all, it won't rub through the brake line. It'll have a little bit of rubber, cushion on the outside of the brake line to keep it nice and safe so that we won't have any issues. But I'm going to get to work on getting this area kind of ground down, get the bracket pre-fit again. And every time I do this, I got to pull the steering shaft out because it's just in the way. And that's why I'm telling you, it's better to kind of get this thing all fit in place first so that you can make everything else fit around it. You just probably still have to pull this out a couple of times with the steering shaft in order to make everything fit. But at least the pedal assembly wouldn't be in your way, because that's the hardest part right now, is working around all that stuff to get this pedal in. All right, it's the next day, everybody. I wasn't going to pick up the camera today, but I'm actually going in for some dental work tomorrow, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk tomorrow evening. So I know there are probably people that watch the channel just to piss and moan, and they're probably going, yay, he's not going to talk tomorrow, but you won't even notice in the video. So I've got the pedal here from last night, and I clearanced a bunch more off of the right side. At first I was just gonna nick the little corner where it was making contact with the weld, the bead of the weld where the two 3/4 inch tubes come together. And I decided that, you know what, I was just gonna give it a little more clearance. There's plenty of webbing there. And so this is what I did. I've basically, on that line that I had right here, and you can faintly see the line that still exists on the lower portion of it, the inside of the webs here. But here's where my line started, and here's where my line ended. And I basically just came in here with the flap wheel and ground this down a good 1/8 of an inch to allow this to go closer in to that 3/4 inch tube. And I've had it back in and it fits really well now. So the last thing I did was I had pulled out these metal sleeves or metal bushings while I was doing all of the grinding work to this. And so I wanted to put those back in place because that's what helps to keep this thing, secure. And so I've got those reinstalled. I'm going to put the pedal aside for now. It's basically going to go probably back in the Ford Racing box. And when I get to that point that I'm putting it back in, I'll probably pick up the camera again. But remember, we're just taking these parts to the powder coater right now to get a jump start so that all those pieces are ready when we, jump back on this car. Some of the things that I've got the car owner working on will be able to do while it's sitting in the main part of the shop. So if I have a few minutes in an afternoon or something, or I'm being held up on one of the other builds, I can jump out there, I can get some stuff done on this car, and again, it'll give me a little head start for when this one comes back into the workshop and up onto the lift. So I've got the steering back in because I need the steering back in order to get the car moved around. So I've got the steering bearing put back in, the steering wheel, the upper steering shaft. I've got everything in except the rack. So if you look down here, the rack is still loose because I've got the bolts out on both sides. And if you're having trouble getting your steering shaft together, that's one suggestion I would make to you. Go ahead and pull the bolts out of the steering rack because it'll give you adjustment, not just up and down, but side to side. And this rack was put in with just the standard bushings that come with the rack, which are fine if you've got the later steering shaft. If you look at this shaft, it is one piece. It's welded. So there is a weld. Let's see if I can focus in on it. There is a weld right here, all the way around here and down at the other end. And this one uses a separate steering rack adapter. So what that means is there's no adjustment on this. You can't cut a piece off of that lower steering shaft and just put it back in with the set screws like on the later Mark IV kits, and I'm assuming the Mark V kits. You can't do that. You have to make this one fit. And the car owner already has turned the bearing around. So the bearing is actually what I would consider face in. So the set screws that you would normally see on the outside, they're on the inside over here. So here's one of the set screws right there, which means if the steering shaft ever has to come out, that basically it's going to be easier just to pull the entire bearing out, which is what I ended up doing, and then pull the whole steering shaft out as one piece. And if you go back to one of the videos that we did on Jim's car, that's exactly what we had to do to get his steering shaft out, because his upper shaft was locked. It was seized into the intermediate shaft, and we had to adjust the position of the steering wheel because it was so close to the driver. And so I had to pull the entire thing out of the car. On the later Mark IVs, and I'm assuming the new Mark Vs, all that stuff is adjustable. If it's too long, you can actually cut the lower shaft and it goes together with set screws at each point. I will caution you, make sure you dimple where the set screws settle into or rest into, so it kind of locks them in place, and make sure you use some locking, thread locking compound. But so I got all that back in. I am in the midst of sending the car owner a list for one of the parts houses, and I'm going to include those offset bushings on his list so that we'll be able to have a little bit better adjustment on the steering rack. It's going to set it just a little bit lower than it sits like factory, and it'll enable us to get that steering shaft out a little bit easier in the future. But that's kind of where I'm at tonight. I think I'm going to stretch this video into one more night here in the shop, but I think tomorrow what I may do, even if I can't talk, is I'm going to drill this cover, which I just installed the other night. I'm going to drill this for the front wiring harness. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to notch the F panel right here for the harness to run through here. And I'm probably going to drill the dash for the rear harness and get it kind of loosely set in place, just so that that portion of the electrical is done, you know, like for now. And then it'll give me, again, it'll give me a little head start when this thing comes back in here and goes up on the lift here in the workshop. But that's where I'm going to leave things tonight. I will catch up with you tomorrow. All right, things didn't go as planned yesterday. The dentist wasn't able to install my permanent crowns. I still had some swelling in the area, and so they wanted to wait another week, so that got postponed. But I went ahead last night, as I said, and I drilled the front of the driver's foot box. So right here, through this panel. And now, if you were using the donor harness, this is where the donor grommet for the EFI stuff goes. And that's why the hole is that size. In the later Mark IV kits, you don't even get this hole here. So you can either drill it out yourself and then put your grommet in for your front wire harness, your chassis harness, or you can run your hoses through for your reservoirs. I'm choosing to do this because it gives us a nice place to get the harness, and the harness will actually come up to right here, and we'll get some cushion clamps on it, and then our reservoirs will go right here, and we're most likely going to bring our reservoirs in through this part of the foot box right here, and then they'll have a straight shot back to the master cylinders here. But I got the harness in, and so it's just run along with some tie wraps just for now. It'll get secured in place later. I just wanted to get it on the car, or get it in the car, so that it's one less thing in a box. I have the rear harness here. The problem that I ran into is because this was an earlier Ron Francis harness kit, there's no grommet on the rear harness. There's no grommet on the harness that feeds the gauges either. And so what I'm having to do is I'm having to put together an order for Summit Racing. And I can order the Ron Francis grommets to match this one right here. I can order those from Summit Racing. You can also order them through Jegs. You can also order them directly from Ron Francis. But I'm trying to get a minimum together so I can get the free shipping. So I'm trying to get a $125 order together for Summit, and it may take me a few weeks to do that, so I can get the free shipping. Everything I do as far as ordering parts anymore, I want the free shipping. They're not available on Amazon. I looked, they weren't available on eBay. So there were 3 places to buy them, either Summit, Jegs, or directly from Ron Francis. And I want to use those particular grommets because honestly, they're the best grommets that I've used, because they're what they call expandable. So the material in the center of them allows you to put not only that wire harness through, but you can put a second one through there of the same size, and the grommet will seal up around the outside and not let air and water and all that kind of stuff through. So that's why I like those harnesses. But I did get the Summit order that we had placed with the car owner the other day, and I actually got the offset rack bushings in. So if you see right here, what these do is they allow the rack to drop down. And so when you drop the rack down, it gives you a little bit more length on the lower steering shaft, which will make it easier for you to get the steering shaft off later on. Remember, when we go to put this Coyote in, it doesn't fit real well in this engine bay with that steering shaft in the way. So when we go to do that, that steering shaft's gonna have to come out again. And so the offset rack bushings help to either move the rack to the side, left or right, or up and down. So if you wanted your rack higher, you could actually flip those bushings around and it would pull your rack a little bit higher. And I got these from Steeda. These are their maximum offset. They actually sell another one, looks the same, but it has a lesser offset. So The offset on the lesser ones, I think, is a 1/2 inch. I believe these right here are almost 5/8 of an inch offset. Now that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but trust me, it moves the rack down quite a bit. I mean, it's a noticeable difference that it drops the rack down. And it does help with the Ackerman angle on the control arms too. So if you're still suffering from a little bump steer in your Mark IV, you can actually drop the rack down and it helps to correct some of that. But don't start adjusting stuff if you don't need to. We're putting the rack bushings in really for no other reason than to give us more length for that lower steering shaft. If you've got a later car that has all the adjustments that you can make to that lower shaft, you may not need these. So don't buy them unless you need them, but just know that they're available if you do. So I got that in, it's all ready to go. We're still waiting on our strap that is going to reinforce this side of the rack. And the last piece that I have that's gonna have to go to powder coat is whatever mounting bracket we make for our reservoirs. And generally what I use is I use a piece of 2x3 aluminum angle. And I've had good luck with that because you can only really get it in one thickness, and it's plenty thick, but because it's aluminum, it's light, it's easy to drill. And what I usually do is I mount it on the bottom side of here, so the front side of it is flush with this 3/4 inch bar on the front, and then the two reservoirs will mount in tandem on the inside portion of that bracket. So I'm waiting on the reservoirs so I can fabricate the mount for them, and then all those parts, including all the parts that we've gotten ready so far, are gonna go to the powder coater. And again, I'm waiting on that one piece from Factory 5 right now. So I think I'm gonna be taking the car, the Mark IV, the Decades Cobra, off of the lift here in the next day or two. And then I'm gonna be putting the coupe back up, and I'm hoping to get the radiator, the fan shroud / fan installed on the coupe. So we'll see how that goes, because I think there might be some interference with the fan we've chosen, but I've got a backup just in case. So I think that's where I'm gonna leave this video. If you are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.